and I'd like to welcome everybody today to our webinar, Issues in Implementing Reform in Developmental and Gateway Mathematics. We have two very special people today, Treisman and Jack Rotman, and this is a webinar presented by the Developmental Mathematics Committee. This is a webinar sponsored by the American Mathematical Association of Two-Year Colleges. And the views expressed by presenters are not necessarily the views of AMATYC, and any commercial products mentioned are not necessarily endorsed by AMATYC. The webinar system is provided by the Lift Institute at Muskegon Community College, and if you have any suggestions for future webinars or programs, please contact me, Maria Anderson, and my email is there at the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Uri first. So let me find his slides here. And it's all you.
So, hello guys. And first let me apologize for occasional coughing. I'm here with a nasty cold. So you should be very glad that this is a webinar and not a face-to-face meeting in some crowded office room. Second, I want to say that Jack Rotman has done some incredible work on behalf of reforming developmental education. And I'm not setting him up for a joke here. He and his fellow AMATYC banditos, as we call them, got together and came up with a design, a new life design. It was the blue box in the early days, multicolored box, for rethinking developmental education. And you'll see if you follow Carnegie work, the Dana work, some of the work happening at fairly large scale, you'll see a lot of the DNA of those early meetings at AMATYC. And this is the proper role of our professional organization, because we can't just be we can't let our courses and our support structures be shaped more by the accident of history than by the realities of today, the needs of today, and the wisdom we actually have today. So AMATYC is making a big difference, and it's even more important now with the release about a few weeks ago of the American Association of Community College Commission on the Future of Community Colleges, where they call for the fundamental redesign of students' educational experiences. That is a stunning recommendation. And the New York Times, Washington Post, the higher ed press have pointed out that it was stunning because the organization that represents our institutions has publicly acknowledged the nature of the challenge that's in front of us. And that structures that were built more than 100 years ago, but really expanded in the late 50s and early 60s, those structures were designed to solve a different problem than we have today. They were largely organized around the high school mathematics curriculum of the late 1950s, pre-new math, early 60s. They were designed to help students complete introductory courses, and they were designed with very limited knowledge of the increasing diversity of the students that our institutions now are privileged to serve. American Association of Community Colleges, AACC. If you search there for their website, you'll see the report. It's a beautiful document. Today, we have a different problem, and I know it's happening in your states. Legislators, policymakers, businesses are calling for us to focus our attention on the completion of certificates, licenses, and degrees that have labor market value. Yesterday's New York Times reported that only 1/6 of recent high school graduates not in higher education have jobs. Another 2/3 are seriously underemployed. And parents out there, the majority of these students are still living with their parents. I know we love them, but we have to let go. And without community college programs that are pathways to viable lives, lives in which you can support your family, they're not going to be well in the future. They will have less upward mobility than their parents, and that will be very dangerous for our society. So everywhere I go, I've probably been near almost all of you in the last 2 years with my work with the Carnegie Foundation and the Dana Center work. And I've seen enormous experimentation with DevEd. Good people rolling up their sleeves, being creative, with very little resources, and focused on the idea of a grant-funded pilot. And if there's anything we've learned, grant-funded pilots never replace or have big influence on the systemic structures that they're challenging. The time has come to harvest our wisdom, and you'll see the core outlines of this in Jack's presentation of a new system. We need to harvest our knowledge, and we need to figure out how to work at scale, because too many of our students are failing to achieve their aspirations because they're stuck in ancient arithmetic algebra courses which are unrelated to their professional needs or career interests. The time is now to do this. I think many of you will know that last week the Texas Association of Community Colleges, all 50 of the systems, signed an agreement to work with the Dana Center to replace the current system of developmental education with a modernized pathway system, which is very similar DNA to the Carnegie work on Statway and Quantway, which is very rich work, and the beautiful work of Focus at Texas State, and the AMATYC general scheme for reform. So think beyond pilots. Think about how do we systematically, as a community of math educators, that organize and validate our knowledge, and then how do we take advantage of this rare open window when community colleges are the forefront of higher ed policy. So first, it bugs the hell out of me to listen to the policy dialogue that suggests that developmental education is a unique failure of higher education. We know that unless our colleagues believe that they can succeed and that their work has been successful in the past, they will not have the courage or the motivation to make fundamental changes. They will become disengaged. So let me just show you a recent study from California, which is the first piece of the architecture of new pathways. This is over 300,000 students taking college credit courses in California community colleges. Notice that only 55% of the students completed the course and received a passing grade. And this is all courses. We all know that the failure rates in first courses is much higher than in second and third courses. So well over half of our students in regular college credit courses, including those placed there by placement tests, are failing. So the idea of repairing developmental education by itself is crazy. It would essentially constitute building a 6-lane highway into a swamp. We need to think in our institutions of the pathways to and through community college mathematics that are connected to a program of study that has value economically and intellectually for our students. So when the non-dev ed faculty beat up on us, I think they need to look in the mirror and look at the data. This is a systemic problem of course failure, not one unique to developmental education. The second big point is that, as I said, when I visit community colleges, usually I teach a day in them, and then I work with the senior leaders in the math faculty. There's always good work going on. Beautiful work on modern delivery systems, some great Emporium work, some bad Emporium work, some great hybrid online work, very interesting instructional experiments, such as those being developed by the Carnegie Foundation. Really nice work. But most of the initiatives are too narrow to actually be sustainable systemic innovations. And there are 5 dimensions that I think it's worth as a checklist thinking about. And the first is the content. We do not want to use modern sophisticated technology or support structures to deliver antiquated, essentially bad curriculum. It's our obligation as faculty members to ensure the integrity of the content of the courses we offer, and we need to periodically step back and ask basic questions about what is the evidence, given the rapid change of mathematics and the economy for the particular courses we teach. We are up to this. We need crossroads, redux, crosswords, the sequel 18 or something, whatever we're up to now. But we need not to be holding back thousands of people who want to be firemen, interior designers, artists, some in health professions, because they can't complete college algebra or intermediate algebra. We need to ask hard questions about how do we modernize the curriculum? Which students really need calculus pathways and the algebra, which is substantial for them? Which students need statistics pathways? And which students need to have courses which deepen their understanding of basics and help them apply them to unfamiliar real-world problems? So content is key. I too often visit programs that are focused on delivery of bad content. The second is sequence structure. If you haven't read it, the Community College Research Center at Columbia released 2 powerful papers written up in the New York Times about 2 or 3 months ago. Tom Bailey, if you search for CCRC, you'll find them. There's fairly strong evidence now that 1/4 to 1/3 of the students placed in developmental math who were just short of the cutoff points would do as well or better if they didn't take Dev Ed. Many of you have seen my presentations on this, the work of Juan Carlos Calcaño, and etc. So we need to have rational acceleration. We need to figure out which students could go directly into college courses with mandatory support, with structures built into the course for support, which students need stretch versions of these courses, and then what do we do about the 1/4 or 1/3 of our students who are starting in basic arithmetic where there are no scalable, inexpensive solutions or fundable solutions to the problem? That's a moral obligation of our field, and if we forget those students and deny them access to higher education, we will have betrayed the historic missions of our institution. Delivery vehicles, Emporium, hybrid, study group, supplemental instruction. These are not silver bullets. We are privileged to serve an incredibly broad cross-section of Americans. And we have to have better ways of figuring out how to get the right student in the right pathway with the right delivery system at the right time. Fourth is student supports. If we're going to increase the rigor and relevance of our courses, and if we're not going to compromise the integrity of our courses, we need a new generation of student supports with a scientific basis. The Data Center and Carnegie Foundation, as well as others, certainly the Community College Research Center and the MDRC are working hard on this, but we now know much more about the nature of student success, where they have problems, than we ever did before, because we have large databases. And here, the work of David Yeager and Jane Muich at the Carnegie Foundation may be the high point of that work in my view. Extremely powerful work about the nitty-gritty details. Right next to it is the work of Kay McClenny, Ceci and the SENSE Project, Arlene Onsberger's work that gives us textured descriptions of the challenges students face in the first days in our classes, where we all know much of their fate is determined. And last, this should not be done as a hobby by the faculty. 2/3 of our courses in many institutions are taught by severely underpaid and undersupported people. If we're going to build change at scale, we need to think of the human capital issues involved, and we need to make change part of the work of the faculty. Because otherwise we're going to get something really god-awful if we ourselves are not in the center of this design with our experience of students. So this is key. So let me say that, this will remind you of the Einstein quote, that when you work on a hard problem, make everything as simple as possible, but not simpler. If we work with too few things, we will not solve the problem. And as soon as we deal with these, articulation and placement, which is now a criminal enterprise, the data shows it's an immoral, criminal enterprise, needs to be questioned and redesigned. And unless we get our higher ed four-year partners to participate in this process, we can't allow dyspeptic math faculty chairs, right, to allow ancient policies to block the success of our students. We need to move to policies where if they finish 60 units in community colleges, they block transfer as 60 units of their BA program. Several states have done this. It's really, really important. Now, last, when I participate in state policy meetings, federal meetings, foundation meetings, this is always framed as a problem of workforce development and international competitiveness. And Lord, we know those are important. But this is really a deeper problem that's central to the real purpose of community colleges. America's democracy depends on upward mobility. When we have people like we have now who do not believe that through hard work and education they could get better lives and that their children won't have the lives they have, the social contract on which our beautiful democracy is founded will erode, and we'll get what happened in the Weimar Republic in Germany and elsewhere. What is the institution responsible for supporting second chances and third chances and upward mobility? That's us. So let's stop arguing about factoring versus completing the square. Let's remember that the big issues here have to do with the core fabric of our society. And the time is now to rethink core structures. We must not let the accident of history be the primary force. We must let our intelligence, our wisdom, and our experience drive the creation of a new system. Those are my comments through this cold. I am passionate about this. I know that is troubling for some, but this is core work for our country. It's not just a math thing. We have to rise to the challenge. Jack, my buddy?
Yes?
Are you going to reveal the internal, let me first do this. This is being recorded so you can get more information about the data center's particular work, which I'm not here to really promote today, but we did a webinar that will be listed so you can learn more about the details of our approach. The Carnegie Foundation site has excellent work on theirs. Selena Vasquez, excellent on hers. Myra Snell and Katie Hearn's beautiful work. It needs to be studied carefully and honored. Peter Adams' work at Baltimore Community College. There is beautiful work everywhere. It's time to integrate this work into an essentially new system. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to switch the slides over here to Jack. And then we'll have some question time at the end as well. So
Yes, definitely.
this is part 2 of the Jack and Uri show.
Yeah. Oh, and don't stand up and cheer at one time. Oh, thank you all for coming today virtually. We hope this is helpful to you. And my part of this is to try to take those general comments that Uri is making and put them in a practical framework for us to look at. So I'm going to be bringing up a couple of ideas. One is a choice you can make to do a targeted reform. And this is situation where you'd take a developmental math course and connect it to specific student destination courses. Or you might take a course and connect it to statistics or to quantitative reasoning or other, and only put students in those courses that need that particular destination course. So of course, the advising and college processes to get those students in there are really critical in this approach. I've got a slide here that will show you a visual image of this model. You got there's a pointer. There we go. You got the existing developmental math sequence on the left that's undisturbed in this approach, and that way it's a smaller reform approach than we could do. This is basically an add-on. Over to the side, you add on a reformed developmental math course that feeds directly into these target courses. This is a to-and-through approach without disturbing what's there now for students in general. So that's one approach. Another approach is to try to do reform for all students at this level. We usually have a beginning algebra course and a pre-algebra course. In the beginning algebra course and maybe that pre-algebra course can be replaced with a reform course focused on mathematical literacy. This course serves many purposes, and it can connect students to those same statistics and quantitative reasoning courses. It also can connect students to the next course in the traditional sequence. So you might take the intermediate algebra course and replace it with the reform algebra course, which connects students to college algebra and more STEM-like math courses. So in this approach, you are not dealing with targeted groups of students. You're looking at the whole population and trying to serve their needs better by putting them in these common generic courses. I've got a visual of this too, and hopefully this helps clarify that those concepts. Start with the reform course here. Let's get the pointer there. The course A, the mathematical literacy course, instead of being just fitting into those targeted courses, serves the general purpose of going to algebra, to quantitative reasoning, into statistics, and obviously other courses could be in the same level. The algebra course then is the gateway to other courses, and we don't want to keep this locked into the existing model. As Ray mentioned, we can't just reform one part. We have to be looking at the whole thing and look at alternatives here, including a blended approach where we take the algebra and combine it with pre-calculus in a 2-semester sequence instead of 3 or 4. So in this approach, you're looking at all students getting a better product. One of the issues in this model is what to do back up here in the basic math and pre-algebra courses. We don't want to assume that all students need those skills, and there are some of us who believe that very few students need any of those skills. That's one thing that we can consider. In this bottom box here, we've got the connection to college algebra and pre-calculus. So we get to our first survey on the enrollments in math after intermediate algebra. So when Ray gets the magic pull up here, you can respond to the nearest 20%. And this is just looking at enrollments after intermediate algebra. What percent are in pre-calculus and college algebra combined? So when you get a chance, make your guess there to the nearest 20%. And we'll wait until we've got most of our responses in. Okay, getting there.
We let them see it.
So looks like we're saying that most of us have less than 50% of our enrollments after intermediate algebra down in that 20 to 40% range, less than half. So it would be interesting to find out what courses are taking up the rest of those students. If you want to type in the chat box what kind of courses are doing more enrollments than college algebra or pre-calculus at the level past intermediate. I find that result very interesting. I see a lot of statistics showing up down there.
A lot.
Yeah. I found that in some ways, statistics is a regional phenomenon. It's very popular in some regions, not so much in others. There are also days when I think statistics is not that much mathematics as much as a set of tools that seem to produce the results that somebody needs. But that's another webinar. Okay, is that good enough for the results?
Make the poll disappear now.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the input. I'll take a look at that later. In connecting the reform to the next level, avoiding that high-speed interstate to the swamp, I want to keep in mind that if we just reform developmental math, it'll tend to degrade over time because it's not well matched to the next level. So you want to keep an eye on all of these courses at the next level. And college algebra is a special case because many of us are using that as a general education course. The classic model is a college algebra course that's almost pre-calculus. It's not well suited to general education. For this, you'd want to look at the MA crafty materials. There's a reference for that later on if you don't already know about it. An area of growth in our profession is quantitative reasoning. If you don't already have such a course, you want to think about developing one. And this is a far better general education course than college algebra, and it's still very sound mathematically. And as you probably know, there are standards for introductory statistics around that you can use to make sure your statistics course is a quality course at the next level. So you want to keep all things connected and reform the system as much as we can. Of course, we don't need to stop at this level. There's more beyond this at the higher levels of mathematics. It's beyond the scope of this webinar. One of the things that Uri talked about was the learning environment. He used different phrases for this. He talked about the delivery, and I'd bring that back here. One of the big movements right now is redesign, which is not truly reform. Redesign usually tweaks the content and really tears apart the delivery system, partly with the goal of saving money. And redesign is also going to be a short-term thing. It'll degrade over time because it's not well matched. So you want to keep your eyes on the whole thing, not just that one part. So look at those three components listed here: delivery, student support, and faculty support. You want to keep things general and broad, bring in as many concepts as you can. A particular thing we're looking at in these emerging models is connecting math classes with student support services at the college. And this hopefully brings in the latest research on motivation and learning that Uri talked about. And I want to bring up here that for us as faculty, most of us are faculty, we need to be skilled with a deep toolbox. We sometimes get habituated and we use the same tools over and over again regardless of the context. And as you know, they don't always apply. So they want to be flexible. So here's another poll. Maria will bring this up. This is dealing with adjunct faculty. For us to be skilled faculty, we have many challenges, including the fact that the majority of our courses are taught by adjuncts. So take a minute to check off all the ways that your institution supports adjunct faculty. I hope you can select more than one of these, because you could, except you can't pick none of these and something else.
Well, technically you can, but as math teachers we shouldn't.
Yeah. So here our total should be well over the number of participants involved.
I go ahead and broadcast this.
I'm pleased that there's not more down than none of these.
It might be interesting to see what other kinds of support people provide, if they don't mind typing it into the chat window.
Yeah, I'm noticing Marilyn's comment about mentoring adjuncts on a volunteer basis. I think that's also an issue of how we incorporate mentoring into the workload of the people doing the mentoring. Yeah, thanks, Barbara, and getting adjuncts on this webinar. I'm really pleased with that. Okay, so keep typing in those other ways that you support adjunct faculty. This is nowhere near a complete list. Part of that is general investment in professional development. Faculty need to have the framework, the concepts and theories to understand this work that we're doing. There needs to be intense effort. It is hard work. We need to have the appropriate tools. And we need to have networking to connect with others, share results. And you might notice that those four things are the same things we expect our students to apply in a classroom. They need to have the idea of what they're doing, the framework. They need to apply themselves. They need to have appropriate tools. They need to be connected. In our case, we also have this professionalism. We tend to be isolated in our professional work, and we need to get beyond that to actually advance the profession and build on each other's work rather than replicating it in our own isolated pockets. We need to be thorough in this to advance the profession. I'll talk just a minute about specific reform models. We could talk for several webinars about these. There's the AMATYC New Life model, which I can give you a reference for in a minute in the chat box. The Dana Center New Mathways project is a high quality project. I'm envious of the materials they've got. We know about the Carnegie Foundation Pathways, the Statway and Quantway. A bit older is the AMATYC Right Stuff materials for college algebra. And there's several state level efforts. The Focus project that Ari talked about in Texas, the CAP, California Acceleration Project, the Washington Project, Rethinking Pre-College Mathematics. There's a lot of information on these that we could share and produce better results together. Our closing question, we look to have your input on this and build our discussion from it. What kind of support do faculty and campus leaders need to implement meaningful reform like this? And we can ask and answer other questions as well, but we'd like to start with this, talking about what people need. So think for a minute and type in the little chat box there what you as faculty need or what campus leaders need. Jillian is asking about Virginia's new structure. They went to the NCAT models Emporium, and I think that will be a 3 or 4 year project, and then I'll move on to something else. Time. Yeah. Anybody got a solution for more time?
Cloning.
Okay. So Jan made a comment there. It disappeared quick. Materials. Maybe you could be more specific about what materials would help. I might have some idea. I don't want to guess too much. Yeah, the administrative buy-in is really, really important. And that depends on them, administrators, understanding our goals and our change in approach. So many of them assume that the best thing is a remedial math program with updated equipment. Oh, Sharon, you don't really mean that, right? Is Sharon in Texas?
I think that so much of this involves the need for good communication to all stakeholders, right? Not just administrators, but to students, to those students' parents. I'm kind of reminded of the reform movement in K-12, you know, new math and old math, and how if parents felt that kids weren't learning math the way they learned it, it was a real pushback on the system. And there really is a need for students and parents to really understand why things are being done differently.
This is true with our advisors and counselors who are trying to direct our students into good paths. One of the problems we had in our work with Carnegie was that on some campuses, the advisors thought the Statway was great, but they were worried that it wasn't permanent and that their students wouldn't earn credit for it in articulation. So in fact, as a safety precaution from their point of view, they encourage students to take the most standardized program. So the work we're doing in reform really needs to be systemic work from the president down, reinforced by state policy and trustees' work.
It occurs to me that, if we could wish for anything, we could wish for somebody at the national level to just say, everybody will accept the credit for these courses. Done. Magic wand. You make that happen?
There's a, oh, sorry. I was thinking about one of the things that Roxanne is saying there about higher ed policies in states. I know that's not unique to Roxanne's state. We need to get some leverage, which is also a matter of communicating the goals and outcomes and benefits of what we're doing.
So Jack has raised another important point. This year, next year, and the year after, legislatures are redesigning community college purposes and policies. In some states, like Connecticut, they've actually, I think, gone too far and blocked access for whole populations. We can see this across the country. The idiosyncratic interests of small groups of policymakers can have very strong effects on our work and our mission. So they need to have, when they're making policy, a clear and unified vision from the professional societies that they need to consider and contend with. This is at the heart of AMATYC's mission and MAA's mission. This is work that really needs to be done by both organizations.
I think Sharon just had a really important point there, that we do have a problem that many faculty do not think math needs to change either. And that's not a small one.
But there's a lesson from years of work from an old man here. If people do not believe that their work is achievable, if they do not believe they can succeed, they will become strong advocates of the status quo. There are some people, friends of mine, who have principled arguments for the old stuff. I think they're thinking narrowly, but they're principled arguments. Many of the people who hold the idea that all students should take college algebra so-and-so are instinctively responding, reacting to the fact that they don't believe they're ever going to have the support to improve it, so they're working on what they actually have control over. Another reason for professional societies to chart the way.
I might just ask a question here, Uri, as people kind of chime in online. What do you think the solution is for the instructors we're simply not reaching? Because I think that a lot of the faculty who are either unwilling to change or haven't heard good arguments for why change should happen. I mean, we have people here today participating who are obviously interested in the topic, but how do we reach the people who don't come to webinars and who don't participate in professional organizations and are in unsupported places? What do we do about getting those people to learn more about these types of programs and the reasons for why we should consider them?
I think that AMATYC has worked on this before, by the way. But one of the priorities should be capacity building of community college math chairs and leadership development for the people who sign up for this thankless work. It needs not to be possible for individuals to determine policy or practice. There needs to be a process within departments led by the mainstream leadership of the department about the purposes and evidence for what we're doing. And I think AMATYC should work with MAA. MAA has done a lot of work on chairs as well. And I think that should, if we're really going to build this new process, I think we should invest in our local leaders build supports, give them tools to advocate for what's necessary, and give them support in understanding what they're actually achieving now with what they have. Keep in mind that our work is not a complete failure. We have to understand more clearly who we're actually helping so we don't screw that up when we build a new model. And there needs to be a person or point group in a department that actually is wrestling with issues at this level. In many community colleges, the chair is completely beaten down with administrative and clerical work and in the task of dealing with 2 or 3 difficult people. We need to get chairs to work on more central problems of departmental leadership.
I guess I'd add, in terms of getting more faculty engaged in this work, most of our colleagues have core values that we share with the important things about mathematics, the concepts and the connectedness, the logic, the application. And if we keep talking to them over time, they will hopefully begin to see the advantages of a different approach to get them out of the burden of mastering 200 skills in a program and get into the fun of the important stuff. But noticing in the chat there's comments about materials.
But it's also...
Yeah, Yuri, go ahead.
I'm saying that to make a friendly amendment, we each need to go out and do this, but we need to figure out what it means for AMATYC, our professional association, to communicate with math faculty.
Yes, yes. Well, in terms of materials, all the major publishers are looking at getting materials ready for this reform work. Some are more advanced than others. Well, I don't want to get into too many commercial details, but Cengage, McGraw-Hill, and Pearson all are working on something. Some of it's a year away from being publishing ready, and some of it's 3 years away from being publishing ready. So if you're interested in materials, contact your local reps and see what they have that they can let you use. Some would be available this coming year for classroom testing.
So what other questions do participants have for Jack or Uri? If you want to type those into the chat window, I'll read them out to them.
Yeah, this is your chance to get free questions answered. Usually it costs you $100 a shot.
Is that what your rate is?
That's right. At
well,
least.
ask a lot of questions
at least.
then.
At least.
Yes.
But the
So Jan has
a discussion.
Of course, if you want to understand your question, that's more.
Jan has a question about transfer issues. Can you talk a little bit about that, one of you?
I think that this is a period of change in the way transfer is being done. More and more states have on their drawing boards, for example, data systems that will allow reverse transfer so that students who go to our community colleges and transfer to the 4-year school, when they complete the AA requirements, get an AA degree, and people have a better understanding of, in fact, what we have contributed to their education. And our completion numbers are more realistic. Second, Florida, some places in Florida, Indiana, most recently, have enacted policies that say that if students complete a 60-unit core and an AA degree, AAS degree, a 2-year degree, that program has to block transfer to this 4-year college, and they have to earn 60 units for it. This is being thought about, and we really need to have organizationally a policy statement about this, because this is good for our students. It's allowing people to innovate at the community college level without endangering our students' futures.
I'd add that some states, like the one Jan is in, January is in Michigan like I am, some of our states are not centralized at all, so the transferability is more amenable to professional connections. Our state affiliates need to get more active in building some support throughout the state. If people at the transfer institutions don't know what we're doing and understand it, they're likely to say this does not transfer. But once they do, they're likely to accept it.
I think Marilyn has a really great question in here that you guys should address, which is, one, how do we determine what math is necessary for each student path? Obviously, we can't get an out-of-the-box assessment system for this yet. And the second question she has that I think is important is that we do have programs at our campuses that require students to have arithmetic ability without a calculator, for example, nursing board exams. So if you guys wouldn't mind talking about those two issues.
Well, for cases where you've got a specific requirement for a specific set of skills, develop yourself a short-term workshop that targets just that. Don't make students sit through a 6-week course to get something that they need to show for a test. Unless you don't have any alternative, using a course for that is not a good use of credits.
And then what about assessing incoming students for what course they should take?
Well, and that's a placement question, and the two major testing companies, AccuPlacer and Compass, are both looking at revisions of their tests over the next few years to incorporate quantitative reasoning and mathematical literacy. Of course, that will take some time. And in the case of one of them, they will do a custom test. If we can get a definition of what we need, they will write a test for us. For some purpose, yeah, go ahead.
I think Marilyn is asking a very broad and central question.
Jack, you must have your mic. You're pressing your mic. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So no, he
just
he
was
afraid
blocking
of what I would
you.
say
I
to
see.
that question, actually.
I can plug my ears.
So there is surprisingly little grounded research on what mathematics is actually necessary for what, but there's some. Michael Handel STAMP project, S-T-A-M-P, is one of the best pieces of work and influential pieces because he actually didn't ask through questionnaires what people do. They went and looked and said, show me the math. Sol Garfunkel did this with the Work Map project. It turns out that only about 1/5 of American workers use anything beyond middle school math, which they actually have to know fairly deeply. Right? And there's now pretty good evidence for that. And if students really need calculus, not as a critical filter, but because they're going to use it, they need a hell of a lot more math. And our students aren't aware of that, and our advising doesn't tell students about that. So we need a national project to collect the actual evidence. The military has done good work on this in their
I can
job
jump in
classification
here.
codes.
There is
This
a
is
company that has this evidence already. I was at the Learning Analytics Conference in Vancouver, and I was sitting with some folks there who are doing work like this. And Kaplan, who does test prep, they have a map that is incredibly extensive about exactly what skills are necessary to be able to do any other skill. And it links up all of it is of course held within their company, but they seem to be willing to share it with foundations and things like that. But they have linked up all of the sciences, the maths, everything that's necessary actually for the types of exams that they prep for, like MCAT, but they do have all of those math skills linked by very specific objectives. I've never seen anything like it published out there in the open, but just for your own reference, you might contact somebody there.
Yeah.
Well, if it's what I've seen, it's really nice work, but its empirical basis is weak. I believe that much of it was constructed by convening
and
people
it's all in
to
data.
think about what people need.
What I saw was based on
to what
data.
They actually do.
Yeah, from their actual.
From the actual job.
It wasn't from the job floor. It was from their software. Like when they look at the analysis of, what does a student have to know to answer one type of question? What did they have to go back and review to get that? And what did they have to go back and review to get that? So it's kind of a taxonomy of knowledge more than anything else.
And often those are collected by presenting a list of skills and having people select from them, which is not necessarily describing the mathematics they need.
Supposedly based off of student data.
Hopefully we have other things. Yeah.
So we need to, in AMATYC, figure out what is the actual state of the art and what is the evidence for the claims made. Because if we're redesigning our programs, let's target them to stuff that matters mathematically and professionally.
See, were there more questions in here? All right, well, we're getting close to the end of our time, actually. I just looked at the clock. And so I want to make sure I put up the end slides here. So let me put those up here a sec so I can get us to the evaluation. And so thanks to everybody for participating today. We've had a great turnout, 54 people. And I just want to remind y'all that we have a Facebook page. You don't actually have to be a Facebook member to go see the announcements on that page, but we do try to announce things like webinars there. So you can go like the Facebook page if you haven't done that. All of our past recordings of webinars are made available. This is a shortened link to get you there quickly. It's the one I always remember. It's bit.ly/AMATYC webinars. So that's easy to remember. Sometimes it can take us a week or two to produce one of these webinars. We have to go through some machinations to get there. If you wouldn't mind taking 2 minutes to evaluate this webinar, I'm going to put the long Zoomerang link here in the window. You can just click on that. At the end of the evaluation is a chance to put in your email address. If you need to have confirmation that you participated today, make sure you fill out the evaluation, and then you'll get sent your confirmation of participation. Again, we really like to have everybody's feedback. You also get a chance to give us suggestions for future webinars there. So I want to again thank Jack and Uri for being our guinea pigs today for our 2-person webinar.
Yeah, I posted my email there. If anybody wants to email me with a question that I can possibly answer or at least confuse you about, feel free.
If anyone wants to ask me a question and get a real answer, they should email me and copy Amy Getz, my partner in crime at the data center.
I agree. It's the only way to really talk to Uri.
You have a mini-me.
That's right. No, I have a person who's smarter, who actually knows what we're doing.
Yeah, I wish I had an Amy.
Maybe you need to take applications.
Yeah. You guys were a great audience today, very involved.
Link to the evaluation there one more time in case you lost it. Is everybody getting that link to work okay? Great.
Yep. Cheryl, what's the no? Yeah, thank you.
Cheryl, are you using the Zoomerang link that I pasted in the board?